Voice check. 1, 2. This is command headquarters of Maxsmodels calling the universe and all glue troopers and all the ships at sea, especially the model ones. Can anyone hear me? We'll be underway shortly. Just give a couple of minutes for folks to sign in and we will kick off. By the way, I have the questions. I think it was Mark from Montana sent for some ideas to talk about. So once we go on, we'll kick off with that. But Mark, I see you're here. I believe you sent me those questions. So that'll be what we kick off with. Got a few pictures to show you, and then it's just going to turn into a big gab session. We are at T minus 3 minutes and counting here at Maxsmodels at Glue Trooper Control. All right, we have some folks requesting volume. That's why I want to get an early start. Let me do a little adjustment here. All right, is that any better? Testing a 1, a 2, 3, 4, 5. This is Mission Control. Yeah, I think this 8 o'clock's working better. It seems to be a better time for a lot of folks. Does anybody recognize this sound? We have a winner. And there I am. Dun dun dun, the man in the magic box. All right. I'm just going to let that slideshow continue to play for a while. Well, how's everybody doing tonight as we kick off episode 33, if I have not miscounted, of whatever we're calling this thing, the Maxsmodels Soiree. And I have some questions that were emailed to me that I actually printed. And then I wrote down a couple of my own. Some things for us to chat about. And then we'll talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. And I'll yak on about what else going on down here. Where's my party hat? Right here. Okay. The Mighty Eighth. in honor of Jimmy Doolittle, who eventually commanded the 8th Air Force, even though he's still more famous for what he did with the B-17s. A lot of people don't know he commanded 15th Air Force before that in Africa, built out from scratch. Thank you. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, I got these questions, and I thought they'd be a good thing to start off with because I'm sure it's the kind of stuff we've asked, and I tacked on a few of my own here. Okay, the first on how to get adhesive off of clear parts. We'll come back to that. Let's see. I believe it was Mark. Was it you that sent me these questions? Pet peeves. One of them. Decals that curl up like a snake the moment you start to edge them off the backing paper. And the tinier the decal, the more likely it's going to roll up, of course. Despite that, Mark managed to get his decals done on his SPAD, which apparently were extremely thin and rather challenging. I was just working on the GB, and I actually had that exact thing happen. It has these teeny tiny little ones that say GB that go on the tail, and I wanted to go ahead and put them on, even though I'm putting the airplane in military markings. In fact, let me just go ahead and throw that picture up here since we're talking about it. This is what I have done with the GB. Of course, it'll be retractable gear. I haven't got the wheels in yet. Of course, it'll be sitting on the ground with the wheels extended, but I want to get a quick picture of roughly what it would look like in flight. And you'll notice it says GB on the tail. I managed to find some pre-war decals that fit surprisingly well. Most of them are off of an SBD. Some of them, obviously, I modified the GB decals so I could keep the number 11, but I had to rearrange the dice. No big deal. But he's right. The GB, there's no GBD up on that little teeny tail. That little red thing says GB. Let me see if I can zoom in on it a little bit for you. And it's, unfortunately, right there it says GB, right behind the pilot's head. There's not one on the other side because that one curled up as soon as, apparently both of them, the decals, apparently on that GB decal sheet, it was just one solid piece. I didn't trim something out very closely because I thought they were separate. And so after I got them off the paper, I had to snip them apart, and one of the GBs wrapped around the scissors, and that was that. I put it back in the water, but there was no getting it back. Now these are not completely seated. The Microsoft, the setting solution, still working on them here. I just applied them, but yeah, that is the acrylic. That was a Vallejo that someone sent me that I used. That's the actual their metallizer. And have the black underneath it. But this is acrylic, not enamel or lacquer. So it actually came out for only my first time using it. I'm not disappointed. Of course, when you zoom back, it even looks better, as do most of my models. You get back here, it looks pretty good. Okay, just put that back. That was not what I meant to do. There we go. So, I am sure we have, thank you. I'm sure we have all had the decals, and I know the thinner they are, the more it's prone to happen. But if you ever notice that the decals will stick to your finger or whatever you're trying to get them off of the paper with, they'll stick to anything but the model. And the thinner the decal, often the better it sits if you can get it on, but of course the more challenging it is. Personally, I think you should get about 3 sets of everything with those super thin decals. But the simple reality is that there's no getting around the fact that the better the decal, I should say the thinner the decal, the better it's going to lay. Most likely, the more chance it's going to snake on you and end up being a mess. I'd love to find a better word to use, but that's pretty much what it's going to end up being. Oops. And it's really hard to get around that. The military decals, and of course the paint scheme mimics the pre-war with the stripe that matches the cowling and everything. The pre-war decals, military decals on this are a little thicker, and but they laid down fine. I didn't really have any trouble with them. The actual GB decals, as you can tell by the slightly discolored film on some of them, was a little bit more of a challenge. Had I realized they were going to be like that, I would have trimmed them off closer. Note to self. But I am quite certain that all of us have had trouble with decals, and that is one of my pet peeves. I think my biggest pet peeve is probably when you do everything right and the model comes out lopsided. You fit every piece, and I've noticed this on everything. Cars, tanks, it doesn't matter. The model looks good until you maybe set it down and look at it straight on, and things are out of alignment. You're like, you did everything right piece by piece, but somehow the sum of the thing did not come out straight. And I know a lot of folks and I tend to forget to do this, to take time to level everything. Sometimes you even, especially the aircraft, you'll set the wings and tail, make sure the fins and horizontal stab and everything are straight. You do everything, and then you come back, and after everything's all done, the cockpit and the tail are out of alignment. And you're like, how did this happen? How did this happen? Hoodow, we hear you. By the way, just a quick note, this little fantasy what-if build of the GB R11, or GB11 I'm calling it, which is a retractable gear version, is in Navy markings. Now, I told you guys there was a story behind this, and I guess I'm far enough along, I can go ahead and tell you what the story is. Now, let me explain why I have the story. TD told me in one of his emails that when he would come up with one of the famous Tom Daniel designs, in his mind, he would always create a story that sort of helped create the model. And when you stop and look at it, the stories on a lot of them kind of tell themselves, like the Red Baron car, what if the, the just a lot of the others. And when he sent me that Dornier 335 that he had modified, and I got to finish it off, had the honor of finishing it off, he had this story behind it that why it was what it was. It helps you to create a more cohesive model. And the story behind this is that the Granville brothers saw the Granny Granville, Granford had not been killed, so he was around still making airplanes in the late 30s. He wanted to get a military contract, and the Army had already turned him down, said, no, the GB's too hot. There's no way our pilot's going to be able to do it. Well, he decided to appeal to the ego of the naval aviators. Well, the Army has pilots, the Navy has aviators, and they land on carriers, so they consider themselves the elite. So they would certainly not be scared of an airplane that's tricky to fly if it's got the performance. So he makes a retractable gear version of the GB, and that he calls the Model 11. And he's both numerically past the R7 and all of them, but also he's trying to stay with the 711, sort of the GB vibe. But he puts the retractable gear on, obviously, to get the extra speed out of it. He gets rid of all the strut bracing, beefs up the wing so it has no external strut bracing, a retractable landing gear because he sees what Grumman did with the FF and the F2F. And the problem is there's no way you're going to operate that thing off a carrier. So what he's trying to do is just use this as a capabilities demonstrator to the Navy with the promise that he'll make it carrier capable later. But he does put, and you'll see it when I put the gear on it, it's going to have a forward link landing gear that'd be able to, it'd be heavy, but it'd be able to take a lot of shock like a carrier landing, and it'll sit kind of high. Of course, we all know there is no way on God's green earth you could land this on a carrier because you wouldn't be able to see the ship. One of the reasons the Corsair took so long to get on the carriers, and it was actually the Royal Navy that worked that kink out, but doing the constant turn onto the landing. But what he's doing is using a technology demonstrator, and of course he's put it in Navy colors, and I'm going to put Navy on it. He put it in Navy colors, just to show the Navy this is what the plane would look like, and it's a promotional, it's a technology demonstrator, and not actually a service aircraft, but he's putting it in full Navy colors just to sort of show the Navy about, look what you could have while the Army's still running around in fixed gear biplanes. So that's kind of the story behind this thing. And in my story, the Navy goes, thank you very much. No. So it is still a one-off airplane. And so, yeah, but the Polikarpov didn't operate off of carriers. And so that's kind of the story with that. And I look forward to having it done. And so the next question that was on the sheet, I just thought you guys might get a kick out of that. And I have really had a lot of fun working on this GB because like with the B-25, I love making the airplane look the way it actually looked. But I also love something like this where you can sort of let your imagination go. All right. Now, I didn't get a picture of the mosquito. The next one on this list is not mixing enough. Okay, if this channel goes dead, I hear thunder booming outside. So if I go off air, it's probably, I'm probably still alive. But they dug out the generators. Imperial troops are in the. So not mixing enough color for the airbrush, and then finding out just how difficult it can be to match the next batch when you neglected to carefully measure the colors the first time around. I am sure we have all had that problem. I actually had it just recently, as in today. And you may remember when my brother called in on one of them, he was talking about when he was a kid building the mosquito, the monogram mosquito. And it's got and I still have that model on the shelf today. And it's got 7 different shades of gray on the belly because he kept running out and he could never get the mix the same way. And I'm pretty sure we've all had that happen to us on more than one occasion. And it really is annoying. Or, you run out of the rattle can. This happened to me recently. I ran out of the rattle can. I was just using one to, it might have been a Snark. And I was like, oh my God, do I have the same? I didn't have the same kind of gray, but I had a similar gray. And I was like, nope, not going to do it. Ooh. Getting close there. Man, everybody's getting severe storm warnings. Orange Tabby's getting them, and somebody just said, be glad you're not in the Big East. Raymond's, so you guys are getting hammered also, huh? Well. By the way, speaking of bad weather and radio communications issues, my wife and I watched a movie last night called Love and Monsters, which was really, they classify it as a comedy horror monster post-apocalyptic movie, I guess is the way they do it. And it is a movie that I imagine, I don't know, the movie made about a whole bunch of money, so they're probably going to have a second one. Maybe somebody will make some of the monsters in it. If you haven't seen it, it's a great popcorn film that doesn't take itself too seriously, although great acting, great writing, very well done. Definitely worth a couple hours of your time, but it's pure entertainment. And we really enjoyed it. It's good sci-fi, it's good monster movie, and it's good comedy. And it's hard to get those three together. And they did. So it's fire season in California, huh? Okay, so but they had a lot of interesting monsters that if somebody was to make, that's something probably some resin builder will do. I was just in New York the other day. In fact, I was going to put this in one of my morning videos, but it just wasn't related to models. But we had to take a 5:30 or 6 a.m. limo, 5 a.m. limo, something like that, which is not a limousine, it's just a car service, from Flushing to Newark Airport. And when you're going down the Jersey Turnpike, you have a great view of the New York skyline. I kept trying to get pictures, and every time I did, a truck would get in the way. And I looked up, and I realized the New Jersey Turnpike is nothing but trucks. And I took some pictures you went through. They have got storage yards and stuff there you just would not believe. And going into Atlanta, I looked out the window and saw on the west side of the Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport just dozens and dozens of massive warehouses. I was like, I don't know what they distribute through Atlanta. It must be going by rail because it's not a port city. But my God, Jersey's got massive truck terminals, rail terminals, and warehouse storage, and Atlanta's got a bunch of them too. And it was I literally could not take a picture without a truck getting in the way. Just, it's so nothing to do with models. I just thought it was kind of a neat side. Arnie playing a London jailer. What was the name of that movie? Watch The Secret Dragons. I don't think I've seen that one. Yeah, the Turnpike's enormous. But back to what he brought up is that, yes, this is my readers and these are my computer glasses. But I am sure all of us have had problems mixing paints, and that's one of the problems with using a paint that's not right out of the jar. Is that the minute you start mixing, it's even if you take the ratios, it's almost impossible to mix them up the same. Get them exactly to match. Well, tell you what. Speaking of that, since we're on that, let me just show you a picture. I talked about this earlier. Oh, it disappeared. Let's see. Okay. Yellow, black. There it is. Okay. You guys may recall I was talking about using black as a base for yellow. Now, this came from a recommendation from one of the viewers. Now, I decided to run a little experiment. I painted about 2/3 of this with black. That actually I made the mistake of using that Rust-Oleum. But oh, by the way, the Rust-Oleum did finally harden today. Although there's still some tacky parts on the MMU, so haven't touched it. But it is drying. But it did dry on this. So this is the thinned out airbrushed yellow paint, and you will notice that the black does make a much better backing or springboard or whatever you want to call it than the natural red. It's much easier to hide the black than the red. And I guess black's more of a neutral color. So priming this thing, you could prime it in gray. And of course, I'm sure that would work. But I had heard that the yellow worked better. And I really think it does. Now, the reason you see it the way it is, the angle I sprayed it from, also I had the paint very thin. So, of course, it tended to run like water and pool a little bit. Later on, I was able to put a couple more thin coats on it. And it finally came out and looked pretty good. In fact, let me see if I can find the picture. I label these things and then I by the way, that's another look at the GB just from a slightly different angle before I added a couple of the decals, just to give you a little. And yeah, I know that one of the stars look like they're a little crooked from this angle, but they look straight when I put them on. Okay, let's see, where was that picture? Page. Okay, you can see the stand underneath the, you can see it's looking a lot better there. The yellow is much more solid. And the black also worked as a pretty good primer for the white because those, to the left side, those solid rocket boosters were primed full black. And then the white went over them and covered them very nicely. It was a little thicker than the yellow, so it had a little less trouble with running. But yeah, a lot of people had said that yellow was a really pain in the ass color to use, and I have been. Especially some folks have sent me some pictures of some beautiful propellers with yellow tips, and I have always had trouble painting the tips of propellers with yellow without getting it to bead up in the center with black edges or thinner edges, I should say. By the way, a couple other little side projects I'm just working on to keep me busy is cruise missile and this little BD5. Those are both $2.99 from $2.99 models, and it took these things were both blue, and it took quite a few coats to cover that BD5, but I didn't really have any trouble with the cruise missile, and they were both made of like the same blue plastic. I think I used a thicker white, but anyway, those are just a couple of side projects I'm working on. And you can see though that the snark's starting to shape up. It's coming out okay, and it's gonna look all right when I'm done with it. I'm actually kind of happy with it. I could have sealed those gaps a little better, but there's a point in time when you just go, good enough. You're wasting so much time on it. Scratchy's talking about the UH-1. UH-1 has these tinted green windows. You see them all the time when I was in the Army because we rode around in Hueys all the time. And I also somewhere, in fact, it's, can you see it in this picture? No, it looks like it's just out of frame down on the bottom down there. I have a UH-1 and I just thinned some green paint to paint those upper windows, and yeah, it's passable. Wasn't perfect. LS made a BD5. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah, I was wondering. You talk about the nose probe. There's a funny thing about that. I looked for snarks that were operational, and there were surprisingly few photos of them. And I know that the Lindbergh snark doesn't have one because it's made more like the operational snark. I found one snark in operational colors with the nose probe, and that was the one that I decided to use as my base. And I think what it was, I think it was a test unit that was already put up in operational markings. So, and if I whack off that nose probe now and putty it up, I'm going to have to repaint that thing with the decals on it, and that always goes well. But I was thinking about, I have a B-47 Strategic Air Command, Star SAC band that could go around it that some of them have and some of them don't, but I don't think they carried those when they were operational. And again, they were only operational about 8 months up in Presque Isle, Maine. And the one good thing that came out of the SNARC program, as I probably mentioned before, was the inertial navigation system, which they wound up using in submarines. Yeah, the SNARC navigation system was so accurate, that's how they found out that Ascension Island was marked incorrectly on the maps. It kept missing the target, and which was Ascension Island, or near Ascension Island. They went and did the math and said, no, the missile's right, the map is wrong. I have my big snark already in red. That's why I didn't want to do this one in red. Why I have two of them painted up the same way. Alrighty, now let's go to the next question, the next thing you brought up. So I'm sure all of us have had trouble getting paints to mix, to match. This one's near and dear to my heart, as you guys may recall, with all the trouble I had with the B-25, with the everything, the wing, the machine gun barrels, and most annoyingly, the pitot tube. Number 3, carefully snipping small parts in the plastic tree, yet the little SOB's pieces still snap in half. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And another one that we talked about just the other day when we saw the decals, instructions with errors in them. Oh yes, more than a few of those out there. And we were just talking about the B-25 that had the Airfix that had the upside down markings on the side. And can you do a video on Steve Whitman? Actually, I am planning to as part of the Air Race series. Steve Whitman, in my humble opinion, Steve Whitman is one of the most remarkable air race pilots in history, even though people outside air racing have probably never heard of him. And let's see. Steve was flying when he was 87 years old, but I think part of the reason that he's so incredible is that he largely built his own airplanes, and he was racing these little basically they were home built. And let me just real quick grab a picture here. Guys, I surely do plan to get back to the Air Race series. I've just got so many irons in the fire. Let me just grab this image real quick. This is him in his younger days. That's Steve Whitman. And sadly, he died flying at the age of, I think, 87 or 88. He and his wife were on a trip, and they think it was carbon monoxide because they were both pilots. And they really don't know what happened. They crashed. They think carbon monoxide made them both pass out. And he invented an airplane, very popular, very fast little home built, called the Whitman Tailwind. But he flew racers, like I say, back in the day when you largely, if you wanted to fly a racing plane, you had to build it yourself. And he was in these little airplanes. He was competing with GBs and everything else. And some of these airplanes, like this Buster, these airplanes, some of them are in museums today. These airplanes are did way better for way longer than they ever should have. real quick. There's one of his little birds right there. And in little airplanes like this, he was racing against everything and doing surprisingly well. Buster and Bonzo, yep. Well, Whitman Field up in Oshkosh, that's Whitman Field. It's named after him. And it was named after him while he's still alive. And he raced from beginning to end. And he must have been a hot stick. You can go out and you see YouTube footage of him racing. He's tearing up the pylons in some airplanes that look amazingly like coffins. And I'm not exaggerating. Go out and look at some of his airplanes, and they literally look like coffins with wings on them. They're shaped. They're very square and rectangular and long. But he clearly was an excellent pilot just to survive in that era. And then to place as well as he did, make a life out of it, very involved. He was one of the founding members of the EAA. Definitely a life well led. If I remember, the FAA determined it was probably carbon monoxide because, like I say, if something happened to him, his wife could have flown the plane. But he also designed home builds and just an incredibly productive, active, capable individual. And so at some point when I do it, right now I've just started collecting data for the one I'm going to do on some of the women in air racing. And I don't want to spoil it, but I've been coming up all kinds of good stuff. And then we're including Poncho Barnes and of course, Jacqueline Cochran. And it'll mention Amelia Earhart, although she was not really a winning race pilot. She was more known for her long distance flying. Louise Thaden and Blanche Noyes and others, people you probably never heard of that were... One of the things you'll learn, and no shock here, is that a lot of the pilots, a lot of the people we know about through history, as John Kitt would point out, it's all about marketing. The person who's the best known name is not necessarily the most capable person. They just had the best marketing department. And when you have a media machine behind you, you become a household name, whether you deserve it or not. So there's going to be some things in there about some of these folks that you're going to go, well, have I not heard of this person before? And, oh, I didn't know that person was like that. And, because things are not often what they seem, or often not what they seem. I mean, I'm going to save it for the video, but we are going to get into some of that. And billion U.S. cruise missiles. Oh, okay. So, let's see. What else did I have? One thing I thought I would ask you guys about. I talked about this on one of the videos recently. This is at one of our crew hotels. They just had it sitting up on the shelf. This is one of those Win-Mac ships set off. And, of course, some parts, some is the funnel's missing and some other stuff, the propeller's broken. Some of you guys said you'd had those. And what it got me wondering about, it's kind of like where old models go to die. And I look at something like that, and I mean, I'm glad it's still around. I wish somebody would fix it. If I had the parts, I'd offer to fix it for them. Not that anyone there really cares. I think it was just something to put on the shelf, to look cool, and it does. But it kind of got me wondering. The same thing with the models I saw in Nantucket, and that was these models that were hanging up there. And I didn't want to say anything because, for the same reason one of you guys pointed out, I realized that the people that worked there, it's just something to hang up to create atmosphere. I get it. And I'm sure 99% of the people that come into the place either don't even notice them or just see them as atmosphere, wouldn't know if something was wrong. And I'm one of those 1%ers who's going, yeah, it's all wrong. But I mean, at least they're being used for something, and that's great up there collecting dust. But some folks have told me that if you need to clean out your model collection, especially this particularly applies to airplanes and maybe cars, is that a lot of times if somebody runs a local business, they don't mind putting them up for display, hanging on the ceiling, just to add a little atmosphere to the place. These were kind of bugging me just because. But then one of the glue troopers made a point, which was exactly why I didn't. Not only because I don't think the people really cared, but also I don't know who built these and I don't know why. And one of you guys related a story to me that you went into a place, you're doing a delivery, and you saw a bunch of models hanging there really poorly made. But you just told he told the little old lady behind the counter that, models look great. And she was, oh, thank you. My late son made them, who passed away from cancer. And I'm like, whoa. The last thing I want to do is go, these models could be so much better. Well, my late son made them. Like, excuse me, I'm going to go out and play in traffic. I clam up, but I'm inclined to go, hey, if you want, I could take those models and spruce them up a little. But the thing is, I don't think most people would appreciate it. And then again, maybe some would. They just, it's hard to say. But at least something like things like this, at a very, very minimum, at least they sort of keep models in the public consciousness to some tiny degree. That's my story. I'm running with it. And trying to look for the positive here. And, you never know whether it's doing more good there, or you should take it and rescue it. But then you got one more thing on your shelf, and now where am I going to put it? As you guys may recall, the thing that really drove me nuts was the, I guess you would call that the wild buffalo, or the buffacat. I don't know. That the GB looks so good, and then I know it's just a Disney plane, but the buffacat. That's what I'm calling it now, the buffacat. I don't know why. It's just a few little changes. It could be such an accurate picture. I really got to let this go. Well, everybody's got to have a thing. If that's mine, live with it. Let's see what else. Okay, I got a couple things in here twice. We already talked about that. Catalo. I like that. Catalo. That's good. The buff cat and the Catalo. The thing is that I'm really being entirely too hard on them, obviously, because, oops. Here I am talking about an inaccurate picture, and what did I create? Ooh, the hypocrisy runs deep. It actually is a nice looking design, though. Probably would have flown better than the Buffalo. Well, the Buffalo was a fine flying airplane until they loaded it down. I don't know if any of you guys are Brewster Buffalo fans. Somebody told me that, okay, I have to be careful here. Somebody told me that there's an airline headquarters in a building in Long Island City that actually is in the old Buffalo Aircraft Factory. And if that's correct, that is just freaking awesome. But it's actually a good looking airplane. But the Buffalo, what's his name over there in military aviation, did an analysis of it. And the airplane was exactly what the military ordered. It's when they started changing specs and adding things to it that it really started falling apart or getting overweight and everything. So the initial design was actually pretty good. And according to Jimmy Thatch, it would outfly the early Wildcats. And then they loaded it down with armor and all kinds of other stuff. And you got to remember those airplanes, they didn't jack up the power. They weren't allowed to. And you got to remember those old airplanes operated on pretty thin margins. Well, someone did send me some Buffalo kits. It wouldn't be that hard. If I took one of those Buffalo kits, painted over and maybe used a tiny bit of putty to fill in the aft canopy so that it had that kind of canopy, maybe put a Hellcat canopy on it. Let's see. Put some Wildcat fuel tanks on it. Flatten the top of the tail a little bit. You just about have that airplane. I think I could take that to them on a stick. They might offer me a cheese sandwich for it. Which, by the way, just an aside, they messed up my order. I ordered a Reuben and went in and they gave me a cheese sandwich and had to wait 25 minutes. I actually had to go from the plane back in, get the correct order, which they had landed. Sorry, you're the one, and then had to go back through security. So I got patted down twice because they don't have known crew member there. And with my metal hip, I kept setting off the metal detector. So Nantucket's a small airport. So I got patted down twice so those people could get my lunch order right. But small price to pay for a Reuben. And I just look at it as a free massage. But perhaps I offer too much. So, let's see what else we got. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay. I want to revisit a subject we talked about. Oh, boo hiss. This is what my B-25 nose and cockpit section looked like when I pulled the tape. And the three across the bottom there that have the round thing, that's where I had cleaned it up with isopropyl. And the isopropyl did get the adhesive off, but it was having trouble because I was using a Q-tip. It was having trouble getting up in the corners. I wound up cleaning them all, and then I wound up cleaning them with a little of the Future Floor Wax. And then once I used the Future Floor Wax, they cleaned up pretty well, and it added a new coat. Now, some of you guys said you don't use Future Floor Wax. Everybody had their own thing. Some of you guys had some interesting ideas. I believe there are two things that are really critical to a good model and to making a model pop. And I don't think this is anything earth-shaking. One, of course, is getting the figures, the human, to look good, because if you have good figures, it really brings things to life. It humanizes it. And the other is good clear parts. If you can get the clear parts right, which is really tricky, it really, really adds a lot. Nothing will mess up a model airplane or a model car faster than the crappy glass. This is now okay. Use WD-40, clean up with soap and water, all Q-tip work. Okay, someone had mentioned that, and I had never even thought about using WD-40. And real quick, pop quiz: what does WD and WD-40 stand for? I know some of you guys know. By the way, despite the aggravation it was with that brittle plastic, this thing's on my coffee table now because I didn't have any place else to put it. And I got to admit, the more I look at it, the more I'm starting to fall in love with it. I'm actually kind of happy. I know this is by far from a flawless build because I don't do flawless builds. I never was able to properly get that seam all the way down the top of the spine to disappear, but I really enjoy it. And I'm happy with it. Water displacement, very good. You guys, I knew you guys would know. That was too easy. And Honey likes the cat. This model airplane is Honey approved. And you can see why I tried to use the photographs as a guide for putting the footprints and the worn off paint on top of the wing and the shiny dull spots on top of the fuselage. Somebody made the point that the salt air did it, but probably mechanics added to it. And judging by where all the footprints were at, right there in the center of the airplane, it's like, yep, yeah, it looks exactly like mechanics walking on the wing and then going over the fuselage to get the other part. By the way, some of the model B-25 images, I mean, they're all fine. They're all great. But some of them were really, really, I'm blown away by them. So I'm looking forward to when that airs. You guys are going to enjoy it. And you still got plenty of time. It's almost, today's the 28th. You have almost a month. In fact, while I got you here, I better check something real quick. I got my schedule for next month. I need to take a quick peek and see what my work schedule is because I might need you to get your pictures in just a little earlier. Come on. Wait for this thing to load. No, I'm off the 27th. I get off the 26th at, nope. As long as you get them to me by, let's say 3 p.m. on the 26th, they should make the show on the 27th, providing nothing unforeseen crops up. Alrighty. Well, that was fun. I'm glad to see everybody has these ideas for removing this stuff. I've had trouble with the liquid, both the blue liquid and the Vallejo liquid, getting it to lift sometimes. And other people haven't had trouble. They say, no, it worked great. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Eucalyptus oil. That's interesting. Okay. Now, Let's see. Did I not? Okay, let me import a picture. Before I do, I want to ask you guys a question. Just whatever comes to mind, if something comes to mind. Now, you guys know I'm a builder. As my brother said when he quoted that Star Trek, a ship in port is safe, but that's not what ships are for. And he's very much of the attitude that a model on the shelf is safe and it collects value, but that's not what models are for. And so I started wondering, I'm a builder. You send it to me, at some point I'm going to build it. But then the thought crossed my mind. And I think I got asked this one time. What model, if someone gave it to me, would I not build? Tell me a model you would not build. Finally, I came up with an answer. Now, let me see if I can find it. I thought I had it in here. I did not. But I do have it saved, so it should take just a second to find it. Musical interlude. There it is. And let me just fit that to screen. Why it doesn't do that automatically, I don't know. This is the kit I would not build. The Anzio Beach. Now, why, pray tell, do you not want to build the Anzio Beach? Anybody remember that in the comic books, that advertisement? That was a $2 kit. My brother had one in the early mid-60s that I played with whenever I got the chance. Never could get enough of it. As you will notice, these vehicles have wheels on the bottom, so there's play value to them. Came with some German tanks and American tanks, all of them horribly inaccurate or not authentic. In fact, I don't even think the Germans had any armor when we hit Anzio, but and one Jeep and a bunch of soldiers and a bunch of terrain and some other stuff. Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of stuff to play with. In fact, this was real. I mean, it was still a model. There were still models, but it was almost, in some ways, more like toys. The reason, though, and of course, it has a horribly inaccurate, artwork with them hitting Anzio with Patton tanks. Which, trust me, if we'd had Patton tanks, this would have definitely, it would have made the war go a lot better for our side, at least in Europe. The reason I would not build this kit if it was given to me is, one, they're valuable. This one was for sale on eBay for $179, and it's already been built and played with. I don't even know if it's complete. But the reason there's a couple of reasons I would not build this particular kit. One is the value. The thing, apparently only gets more valuable over time, but that's also, it's just not really much of a kit. A lot of the stuff's inaccurate. It's not like you're going to make an accurate diorama with it. It's almost more of a toy. It is worth some money. It's not something I think I would just, when I was 4 years old, there was plenty there for me. I mean, it was awesome. But now I would just be, you know what? This isn't something I want to build or display. Everything's just wrong. If I want to do an Anzio diagram, I'll research it and do a more accurate one on my own. I'm just going to leave it in the box, put it on the shelf, and let it collect value. To me, there's just not something, there's nothing here that I would personally get out of it. So, that's my rationale behind if I got that kit, I would not build it. Another one I probably wouldn't build for not exactly the same reasons, is this one, which you guys are all going to recognize here. And Rat Patrol. I probably wouldn't build that one just because of sentimental. That's another one that my brother had that I just got a kick out of playing with. And I would most likely just go, you know what? It's just too, I'll get a couple of 125 or 135 scale Jeeps, and make Rat Patrol Jeeps out of it and get the figures and make my own diorama. Get myself an old Lee tank and make it up. If I was going to do a Rat Patrol diorama, I would get the kits and actually make them look like the Hollywood vehicles. Because if you're going to do it accurately, you'd have to do like SAS vehicles. And to begin with, everyone would have to be British. And the Jeeps wouldn't look anything like that because the SAS highly modified their Jeeps. And if I wanted to do something for the show, then I would make it look like the vehicles in the show. Not that I have any intention of doing that. But I just, if somehow I came across an intact Rat Patrol kit, that's one, for sentimental reasons, I just couldn't bring myself to violate it. some clever guy could probably make a few bucks selling me one in the cellar wrap full of broken parts, that just go, oh yeah, but if you break the plastic, oh no, I won't do that. And by the way, that both those, the Anzio and the Rat Patrol, are 187. So, if you have a model railroad layout, they would go with that. And I just got curious how many other dioramas that Aurora did, and apparently there weren't any. Those two are it. So I looked up 187 scale, and this is it. They made 4 buildings, a ship, and the Rat Patrol, and of course the Anzio. They made a ranch house, a colonial house, a schoolhouse, and I believe it was a whaling ship, and a church. And none of those seem to fit well with a Rat Patrol or an Anzio beach set. But it got me wondering what made them decide to do these. And I'm assuming the idea was people can put them with HO scale layouts at 1:87 scale. Burning B24, she's fine. She's fine. Thank you. Everybody's doing well here. Hope you guys are all doing well. But the Special Air Service and the Long Range the Desert Group. Yes, correct. Thank you, Hidel. Keep me honest. I read I didn't read any books. I read several in-depth articles in the SAS and Long Range. And one of the things that was interesting, since they were going around in the desert in Jeeps, they found that they needed to use the same kinds of techniques that sailors use to navigate because they were on an ocean of sand. And once they did that, they managed to keep from getting lost. Devilishly good idea. They started off using trucks, but they weren't versatile enough. That's why they went to the Jeeps. And man, they cut everything off those Jeeps they didn't need. They got rid of the windshields. They were even cutting out grill work. I think they left 2 of them to strap that condenser can to the front on. Those old systems, weren't as airtight as modern ones, like the cooling systems. And of course, out in the desert, everything evaporates. So they came up with these condenser cans, not unlike the condenser sleeve on a water-cooled machine gun. And that way, the hot water would go in, recondense, and recycle back into the engine to get more range out of the radiator without having to keep refilling it with water, which was a precious commodity. And you look at their Jeeps, and half the cargo is water and gasoline. It's all about the trains. Trains. So those are the kits I would not build. The Rat Patrol set or the Anzio Beach. I probably wouldn't do the El Alamein one. That was actually an NPC kit, though. Some of those old diorama kits, they didn't really make good dioramas, but they do have, because I built them as a kid, they do have a certain sentimental value. So a couple of those I might be, then again, I might be inclined to go ahead and build them and do the very best job I could with them. If you guys ever want to mix genres, something like this, there's a way you can get away with anything. I don't care what it is. Kaiju, military, fantasy. All you got to do, and Aurora made these for a while, all you got to do is get a little movie camera crew and put them in front of it. And then everything is legal because, they're just making a movie. And don't think I haven't thought about doing that to save a few of my models. So, your turn, guys. What's up? We've talked about all the stuff that no, that was it. Instructions with errors and kits I would not build. How to get the tack off of clear parts. That's all the notes I had to talk about. And we've got plenty of time to go. So, what's bugging you guys out there in YouTube world? Time for a refill. Little sailing ship. I'm just going to run this in the background while we're chatting just to give it some visual. Hey, Brian. Brian. Okay. Brian. Got to watch where the R is located. I'm just reading some of your comments here. The decals and the accurate miniature. Okay, well, we were talking about decals earlier. Are they wrapping around when you try to... What's wrong with the decals of the accurate miniatures? Because I didn't have any trouble with mine on the Vindicator. I will tell you one nightmare I had on the Felix stove. The decals are extremely high quality. Don't get me wrong. No problem there. And they gave you plenty of them because there were several different versions. You got to give the old Peter Jackson, the guys at Wingnut Wings, credit. They did not go cheap on anything. But they had decals for every freaking label on the airplane. You basically, if you're going to make that Felix stove, or I'd imagine any Wingnut Wings model, as accurate as possible, you're going to have to build every subcomponent, paint it, and decal it before it goes in the airplane. Because once it's in there, you're not going to get those decals on it. And it can be as complicated as it can be as complicated as any as building a real one. Sarah Jane, thanks for joining us. I know it's late where you're at. I appreciate you staying up. And and I really think the Felix stove, I swear if I get another one, I'm gonna build the internal section and set it aside as a separate display. It's almost, and I look at, somebody was telling me that HK Models also makes a 1/32 scale Lancaster with about a 3-foot wingspan, and I'm waiting for somebody to come out with a 1/32 scale B-29. Which, if that happens, I'm just going to have to rent a hangar, move in, and start plotting raids against Berlin or Tokyo or Nagoya or something. Because at that point, you're basically almost building a real airplane. One other thing, though, I've noticed is that if, and I'm not saying they should do this, there are some 124 scale kits out there, usually single engine fighters, Spitfires, Hurricanes, that kind of thing. But if the nice thing about a 124 scale single engine aircraft is that you can put 124 scale model cars and 124 scale figures with it. You can get into some really, really beautiful museum quality work. And, of course, then again, you run into the storage space issues, but, there was a 1/32 scale B-52 in the works because some people are gluttons for punishment. It's funny, though. I look at that after I did the unboxing of the two kits. I look at the B-29 and the B-25, and even though the B-29 is a fine kit, I look forward to building it. But it's kind of, how can I put this, just a basic kit. Whereas the B-25, you get individual tubes and pipes on the engines. I mean, you're getting up into Wingnut Wings kind of detail, at least to me. And if I was going to give someone like a kid a gift of a big airplane, I'd definitely give them something like the B-29. It's a little more of a straightforward build. My issue is decals is I have to conform with a 8-gun B-25. Yeah, decals and corners don't go in, curves don't go together well. I remember, oh gosh, what model? It was a model I was trying to cover in using real foil to get the metal look. I did that on the F-102 on the rear end, and that wasn't too bad because it was a small area, but I did it on one, getting the cowlings. They say just keep burnishing it down, all the wrinkles will work out, and if you don't tear the foil, it will. But it's a lot of work. I mean, more than just using the Alclad. And when you're done, it's really hard to get foil, no matter how thin it is. If you use a lot of it, after a while it just sort of starts to make the model a little, thick up a few areas it's not supposed to. It's tricky to work with. What freaks me out is like that 1/16 scale Spitfire that I have, and I gave that to my buddy Donovan, and I still have the 0, and it's, huge wingspan and everything. It came from a factory pre-made, and it was just flawlessly built. It's better than I could build it. That's kind of annoying when you can go buy one of these Universal Soldier models. You're looking, man, this thing's like almost flawless, and it's built in a factory. I don't know how they paint them. I'm sure they have just some kind of I saw with the trains where the brass molds, you just stick them in, hit them with the paint, and it leaves up. How brass fits that tight repeatedly, I don't know, but My wife was telling me that because she's off in doll world, and there were people selling these never produced or out of production dolls, and they had all kinds of problems. It turns out they were probably factory rejects, but since they were limited run, there weren't any available. It's pretty much all you had. Once you cleaned them up, you could do something with them. But I tend to wonder how many of these beautifully made, pre-made models that, like the Universal Soldier, I think is what the name of the series was, or Ultimate Soldier, something like that. I wonder somewhere there's probably a junkyard full of thousands of those things that, had blemishes they wouldn't put in the box and sell. Like, get those. I don't know what the heck you do with them, sell them to Hollywood, do mass formations. But Trey's is talking about some of the RC, almost ready to fly RCs. I've seen some that are pretty good. I almost bought a crop duster, but I think if I get another radio, I sold my radio control Stuka. I think if I get another RC, it's probably going to be a crop duster. I like doing low passes. At bigger scales, the better they fly. This is true. The squirreliest models, I've flown some small RCs that were just foamies, and they can still be real squirrely. The bigger the model, generally the better it flies. That ME262 I had with the 54-inch wingspan, which is really heavy. If you get off the ground, the problem was if you picked it green, she'd wingtip stall on you in a heartbeat. You had to really get it smoking down the runway. And but once it was in the air, it flew beautifully. It just fast. You had to, and I see these guys flying these little ones that they actually have speed races with them. I just don't have that kind of concentration. Do you remember the Byron Originals? It's not ringing a bell. A 124 Lysander. I've always thought the Lysander was such a cool airplane. It's like the Corsair. It's so ugly, it's beautiful, and it does such weird stuff. It's cool. And I watched a video of a guy flying one of the few that's still around. Yeah, that airplane is one I'd love to get to fly someday. I love old airplanes like that they just sort of got a cool gee whiz factor to them. And the bigger the RC, because RCs get out of sight, especially the fast ones, real quick. And I've seen these guys fly these F-15s that are really not all that big, 40-inch wingspan or something, and they keep them in the correct air superiority gray colors. And they have the little LED light afterburners so you can kind of track them when they're heading away from you. But they do the turns and come back and everything. I'm like, man, I can barely see the bloody thing. Let's see real quick. Just edit image real quick here. Browse. Let's see. I'm not sure. Oh, you know what? I don't even know where that picture's at. Never mind. I had this genius idea today. I figured that I knew a way that I was going to make more room in the TARDIS. I was going to move the music box that I have someplace. I got down there and forgot that's where I was storing a bunch of models. So as you can tell, shelf space is getting to be a bit of a premium. Now, most of the vehicles there, with the exception of Exner's little car there, are just die cast that I had bought. So those will probably be coming down to make room. It's going to get to the point where the only thing on the shelf is stuff that I've built, and all the die cast stuff's going to go somewhere else, But as you guys mentioned the other day, I got permission from High Command to put a couple of models inside the house, which is something I've, waiting to be built, which is something that I have not had to resort to before. And I'm not entirely sure. I want to get on them, get them built, get them on the table as fast as I can, because the right there behind the photo box, it's the B29 and the B25J. First off, I want to build both those kits because I think they're cool kits. I also have never built an HK models before. When I first saw the Big M, I thought, Mobius made this? I was like, oh no, that's not Mobius. But it's very, very easy to start putting kits away and kind of forget they're there, which, I guess brings up another question. Have you guys ever, like, I know everybody does different things with their stashes and everybody has a different size, but have you ever I'll put it down here and look at, oh my gosh, I completely forgot there were models here, and found a bunch of models that you completely forgotten that you had? And please tell me yes. But anyway, I didn't say nothing. Okay. One of the things I forgot when I looked under the table, like, oh yeah, those are there. Well, parts, of course, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. It's not just me. The more, the more I do things like, oh my God, did I do that? And then and you know what? I'll just confess it. And then all of a sudden, all this, oh, I've done that. And you'll realize you're not operating in a vacuum. You're not the only one on the planet that's done that. Where are you at, JW? You said, well, I've still got thunder rumblings out here, but they seem to be in the distance now. Well, Brian, we cherish them, absolutely. We just tend to forget we have them. There you go, 144 airliner kits. Well, yeah, it does. It does. Before I started this channel, I remember counting. I had 12 models on the shelf, and my wife was adamant that, okay, you can buy more models when you build those. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then all of this took off, and I was like, wow. And I never, ever conceived that I would have the embarrassment of riches that I have now. And but I plan to build every one of them. I figure I have enough models now to carry me for about the rate I build. Carry the 2 and divide by the rotation of the Earth. Assume there's no time dilation. Probably 10 years. But you know what? I shouldn't say that, because, a lot of these kits are 8, 10, 12, 15 piece kits. They're just afternoon builds. You can build 2 a day and bring out your paints and just make day builds out of them. So a lot of those kits are super quick. Then you have ones like the B25, the Felix Stowe, that are going to be much more in-depth builds, depending on how you decide to build it. Also, it has a lot to do with it. Don't forget, you can get one of these. Jeff signing off. Okay, well, have a good night, man. Sorry, it's impossible to keep up with the comment thread. So when somebody leaves, it's usually I catch it because somebody else is wishing them good night. Oh, I could. One thing is, a lot of people build at a different speed, and one of the things I try to do is not. Well, I shouldn't say I try to do. One of the things I end up doing is I mix my builds up. Like after the Felix, though, I did a couple of smaller builds that went very quickly because that was a big, total focus project, and the B25J, the Edward P51 that Mark sent me, and a couple other kits like that are big focus kits because they have a lot of detail. You want to do a nice job. The B29, actually, I anticipate not taking that long because although it's a big kit, it's not a particularly complex kit. I'll probably buy a mask for it, and that should facilitate painting it a lot more easily. One of the problems I had with the little B29 was I wanted to paint the model, but there was no way to properly mask the bubbles where I was guaranteed not to get any overspray. So I let the bubbles out They were inside the model and spray painted it, and then I had to get a long thing to reach in and kind of suck the bubbles out and glue them in place. It worked, but it was a lot of trouble. But it's worth doing it though, because you wind up with a really nice clean edge around it. And I had thought about maybe just painting the thing before I put the halves together, then glue the bubble in place, then putting the halves together, then just working the seam and then taping off everything but the seam. And since you're dealing with a model that has a lot of different aluminum colored panels, that's another way that might be easier. I normally, although I'll include the details of a kit that has a big interior, a lot of times I'll do a real basic paint job on it because you're not going to be able to see it. And for those who like to hyper detail the inside then cover it up, that's fine. I get it. They know it's there. It's a personal sense of achievement. But for me, I just don't like it. But I know some folks like to do cutaways, and that to me is a real commitment. But for those who can do it, salute. I have nothing but respect for that. Something we might do someday as a viewers build, do some kind of speed build. I mean, keep the kits basic and just go, okay, today's Monday. Send me the pictures on Friday. That might be fun. And I've seen some pictures of Scratchy's catacombs. Trust me. You could get lost in there. He has to put on his Indiana Jones hat to go in there. And right now, though, with the certain rare kits I've noticed have gotten popular again, that people are starting to look for. I'm not sure why, but what was it? I know I always said the XF108 was one of my Holy Grail kits, and apparently a couple of folks recently. Now you can get I think Fantastic Plastic and maybe what's that other one? Oh gosh, I forget the company makes all the weird. Could have been German Aircraft. I think they have them, but the actual, was it Aurora made it for a while? Those kits, apparently people are starting to snoop around for those again. And there's a couple other kits. The Russian Bomber is a kit, the nuclear Russian bomber, which is just, my Sheshev. But apparently that one has, I saw a built one that popped up a couple times on eBay, and some guy sells like a refrigerator magnet of the box art. But that actual kit is something a lot of people have been scoping around for. And it's funny that something, I know you change a little bit, notification about your post. YouTube. I have no idea. It's like I have to watch commercials to watch my own videos. I never told them they could put commercials in my videos. They just did it. YouTube is one of those things that you have... it's allowing us to do all this stuff, so it's great in that regard, but they got to make their money. So, if you want to pay the $5 a month or whatever, then you don't have to deal with the commercials. But other than that, they're like, sorry. One of the things is, for example, if I monetize this channel, I pretty much have to do that, and that's one reason I don't like plus I don't think I'd make enough money to be worth it. Plus if you look down, most of my videos cannot be monetized because I've borrowed music or imagery or something that and all that would go away. And oh my god, losing an important part of a kit, man, we've all done that. That Russian bomber, yeah, it was my Sheshev itself was a pretty easy airplane. Well, ad blocker is good, but it only does so much for you. I've got ad blocker on my regular Google, but I think it can also slow down the runtime. I'm not sure, but it's the algorithm. You're fighting the machine. They'll strike for music in a heartbeat, and I got one strike. I don't remember what the heck it was for. I got my best video ever, which was just shy of 1 million views, which is on the P-40 Pearl Harbor boys, Taylor and Welch. They profiled their two flights because they landed, they went, fought, landed, rearmed, took off, and fought again, and went back and landed. They just took it down. They didn't say anything, and I don't even think I borrowed music for that. It was, I don't know what it was, but they never notified me. And then recently, like I said, with the Tegan Tiger, they took that one down. It says, "You want to contest it?" I hit the contest. I'm sorry, this button is currently not working. Who do I notify? Yeah, I mean, I didn't care. It was just an unboxing video of an RC tank, but come on, and they said I'd violated their hate standards. I'm like, really? So never got to contest it. Bruce, you're moving on to your seaplane. Guys, Mystic Modeler Ships has got his own channel, Bruce, and he's done some great ship models, but he's also done some aircraft and cars recently, and he's done some beautiful work. Is that the Martin Mariner that you're building? Or I remember you were showing that one. Or have you already built that one? Gosh, I lose track. They hate that you have. Yeah, we pegged out the fun meter and we're violated. Oh, really? Atomic Canic, it was missing. Someone recently sent me that repop of that Renwall kit. So it's another one I want to get on. Music and movie reviews and reactions get hammered these days. Really, it doesn't surprise me. The system's not perfect. Getting a person on the line is virtually impossible, so you can forget that. Yeah. My wife actually suggested, and I'm not going to do it because, again, I don't monetize this channel, so if they pop me, I'm not going to lose any money. But on the viewers build, she had actually suggested that I blot out the swastikas on models that are submitted. Nah, I'm not going to do that. If it gets to the point where YouTube is actually going to like one of our viewers builds and saying we're taking this down for hate because that was, I'm like, we're already up the creek in that regard. Actually, Raymond, I'm probably wrong on this. My understanding is that with the atomic cannon, that thing had to do so many revolutions, as it spins, it goes out the barrel before the nuke would arm, so that if you did have a short shot, it would not detonate the nuke. Of course, I don't know how far they considered that. This is the same army that invented the Davy Crockett. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with the Davy Crockett, it was basically, and I'm not joking, it was basically a nuclear bazooka. It was what looked like a 250-pound bomb screwed on the end of a tube on a tripod. And the first order of business when you went to use the Davy Crockett was to dig a trench for the crew to jump into when they fired it, because they were inside their own nuke blast. Yes, the United States Army had a man-portable nuclear weapon that had such a short range that the people that fired it were still inside the blast radius. You have got to be pretty desperate to use one of those. That's pretty much when the commie hordes are coming over the hill right in front of you. So, I'd love to see the recruiting poster for that weapon system. Davy Crockett. A good way to nuke yourself. That is correct. Orange Tabby's pointing out that all you got to do is go, if you want one of these mugs, is just go to the Facebook page and download the logo. And Walmart is where we get. My wife ordered this one for Walmart. Aside from it's just a nightmare to deal with, this mug cost me $25. And if I was going to sell them, I would have, between the shipping and everything else, the bloody things would be running $50+, and nobody should have to pay that for a mug. It's much cheaper just to get your own, have them in, or go to one of these novelty shops with the thing. And maybe I've ordered 100 of them, but the 155 millimeter Sheridan gun was another piece of work. I believe by that you're referring to the Shillelagh missile system, lad. Okay, since you brought that up, I've probably mentioned all this before. An M551 Sheridan is the first armored vehicle I ever got inside. It was at a military display in Quincy, Florida, my hometown. And I guess I was, before I went to military school. So I was 12, 13, probably 12 years old. That would make it about 73. And they brought out an APC, an M113, a Sheridan, an M551. They flew in a OH-58 and a Kiowa Ed, Jet Ranger, and a UH-1 from Fort Rucker. They put them all on the public football field and put them on display because, of course, it's trying to recruit kids. And the guy said, "Oh, it's all aluminum." And I remember being disappointed in the M551 because I hopped in the driver's seat and I'd seen all the old movies. The guys get in and they slam the hatch, right? And I'm like, "Hey, where's the hatch?" He goes, "Oh, it rotates." I'm like, "What?" And it's a half moon shaped affair, and you drop in and you reach behind your head and you just rotate. And this thing swings around over your head and locks into place. And it had the periscopes in it. Well, the idea behind that is that no matter where the gun is traversed, you can still open the hatch and get out. Apparently, it was not unheard of that tankers would get trapped because the gun barrel would go down on their hatch. They couldn't get it open. And in a burning tank or something, you can't, you don't want to sit around and wait for the other guy to get out of his, or, so anyway. And they said it has aluminum armor. And even as a kid, I was like, aluminum armor? God, why not just make it out of wicker or rattan? But the 82nd Airborne Division held on to a handful of them after they were taken out of mainline service because they were light enough to be airdroppable. Their last combat use was Operation Just Cause. I know this because my brother, the same one who's been on this show a few times, his mission in the Air Force, he was a navigator on a C-141 Starlifter, and they dropped a Sheridan to the 82nd during Operation Just Cause. And after all the years and years of navigator training and experience and practicing drops out in the middle of nowhere and cell nav and celestial navigation and all that stuff, so he could pinpoint accurately, he winds up dropping the thing on Panama International Airport using the ILS to get. I was like, well, that was easy. And one of the guys in the RC club crewed one of them, and I'd heard about him when I was in the Army. And he was telling us it was the gun on the M551, which was a 152 millimeter Shillelagh missile system. Now, I got to give the Army props for being willing to experiment. This was an interesting concept. The technology just wasn't there yet. So what they did was they put a guided missile system on the tank that could also fire a conventional shell. So you loaded the missile in there like a shell and you fired it, and it was a rocket, it was a missile, and you guided it to the target. But you could also slam a conventional round in there, close the breech, fire it as a conventional cannon. Unfortunately, the Shillelagh missile system never worked properly. In the test environment, the controlled environment, everything seemed to work. But out in the field where the vehicle's bouncing around and doing all these other things, and the computers getting bounced around, and I heard when they airdrop them, half the computer components would wind up on the floor. It turned out to be far too delicate. This is before the days of the kind of solid state circuitry we have now. So they used it more as a conventional gun. But it was possible to set the gun off without the breech being locked. And I forget the particulars behind it. He went into detail, but apparently you could slam it, think the breech was locked, fire it, and of course it exploded inside. And there were actually some fatalities over this and quite a few injuries. Also, the aluminum armor could not take a hit from crap and survive. And he said there were actually a couple of them they could see daylight through the cracks. So interesting concept. It was really intended as a reconnaissance vehicle, I think. But so when he talks about the weapon system on the M551 Sheridan being something else, that's a pretty good way to put it. But again, you learn from doing, and later systems were much improved because of what they learned from it. But they were trying to get a little too much out of a little too little. That's like the Army had a tracked vehicle I believe it's called the Scorpion. Now, that's not to be confused with the British Scorpion, and I actually thought it was a great concept, and the Army liked it and had it for quite a while after the Korean War. But the Army wanted the infantry and the airborne infantry and the lightweight and the light infantry to have something that could fight a tank, or at least have a prayer against it. But they didn't want to get into armor and tanks. And so what they had was this small tracked vehicle, and it's kind of in the idea of the original German. Was it the Rhino and the Nashorn? It was sort of that concept. They had a small, flat tracked vehicle that had a big ass gun just on top with nothing but a shield. And I think it was a 90 millimeter, and it could punch a hole in some pretty respectable armor. But it gave light infantry something to shoot back at that was mobile and relatively fast. The only problem was, obviously, you're completely exposed. All you had was this plate in front of you. But it was a great ambush weapon. And I don't know if it ever saw combat. But oh yeah, they had a version of the M60 that had the Chalet. They had. Don't think it worked any better there. M56 Scorpion 90 millimeter gun carriage. It was a 90, yeah, and that was actually I thought it was a neat idea. Let's face it, it was the same thing the Germans were doing with the Martyr and the Nashorn, but we're never going to admit that. Faulty Towers, don't mention the war. You started it. We started. You invaded Poland. That is the episode everybody remembers. That is up there with Monty Python's Dead Parrot skit. It is an ex-parrot. It is a parrot no more. Well, Pops, P-51, I actually got my No Slack Awards for spending a week running a tow missile, targeted optically wire-guided missile. Actually, it was for the Dragon, which was the M47, which is a shoulder-fired version that us guys in the Air Assault Airborne carried because it was man-portable. Good luck hitting anything with that. But the tow missile system, you had to be a bit of an artist and a marksman to hit anything with it. But if you did, it was a pretty amazing system. And they put the tows on everything. Helicopters, armored vehicles, Jeeps. There were tripod-mounted versions that were technically man-portable. If you can hit the target with it. The Sagar is the same thing. The Russians had their Sagar missile. They had the Russians outsmarted us, though, where the Sagar and the tow were concerned. Because you fire the tow, you're sitting right there with the targeting device. And that big telltale poof of smoke, believe me, that's a bullet magnet. You shoot that at a tank, everything in the brother is going to be shooting right back at you. So happy luck, just calmly tracking the target. The Sagar, which is flown with a joystick, and it's apparently trickier to fly because it's like flying an RC rocket. But with training, you can do it. But the Sagar, the operator was away from the missile. I don't know how far, but at least you weren't sitting right by the plume of smoke. That was the telltale sign of where you were at. So nowadays, of course, they got Hellfire, which is fire and forget. Mark the target, fire it, and run. It reminds me. You guys have probably all seen the movie Deadly Mantis about the giant praying mantis that comes out of the north. Anyway, are we the baddies? That's a great one. Anyway, the Mystery Science Theater 3000, MSTK 3000, or MST3K, whatever. Anyway, they spoofed that. And one of the best lines they ever had was, whatever it's Cambot or which one, but he says, the opening credits are showing about the construction of the dew line, which is a very impressive feat of engineering. He goes, where once there is nothing, now there is civilization. And, it shows the dew line and pine tree and all that. And he goes, after all this, how could we really bring ourselves to disarm? Well, 15 meters away from the command stick is 15. At least you're 15 meters away from the I call it the snitch smoke because it just told everyone where you're at. And for those who are not familiar, are we the baddies? There's a really hilarious British comedy team, Mitchell and Webb, and they did the episode with the two German SS officers questioning, are we the baddies? What do you mean? Well, the Americans have eagles and everything, and the British have lions, and and what do we have? Skulls and crossbones. Yeah. And he's like, well, what about the Russians? They have a sickle. Yeah, so the one thing we've learned is, what is it, the sad state of Russian agriculture, their need for modernization. You have to go watch their material. Their bit they did with another British comedian where there are a couple of RAF pilots, and they're mocking them because they fly hurricanes, and they fly hurricanes, not Spitfires, hurricanes are for special kids who are on free lunches. It's just God, it was freaking hilarious. I watched a couple of those, about cried. Uh, so Keeping Up Appearance with Hyacinth Bouquet. Oh my God. If you haven't seen Keeping Up Appearances, there's this woman, Hyacinth Bucket, and who's all about keeping up appearances. So she goes, Hyacinth Bouquet. She'll answer the phone, Bouquet residence. Anyway, you just have to see it. Hey, Ken, glad you could make it. Oh my God, I have to give the Brits credit. They always talk about how they have weird humor, and they do, but when they get it right, they knock it out of the park. Blackadder, Keeping Up Appearances, Faulty Towers, even if your Have You Been Served has its charming moments. It wasn't one of my favorites, but it was competent. It was good, and they and of course the irrepressible Monty Python. Side note, the I saw a thing that was done like just about a year or two ago. I think it was Palin and Cleese on stage just talking about it. They're both in their 70s or 80s now, but still very sharp. And something I didn't know about Monty Python, they never ad-libbed. Monty Python, the reason that it was the way it was, apparently they said, we're not actually actors. We were all writers. But we couldn't get anybody to do our material, so they wound up doing it themselves. Since they were writers, they never strayed from the script. They were very disciplined in that way. Because to a writer, ad-libbing going off script is a bloody insult. But he said that's a big part of why it was the way it was, is they were writers. And I just thought that was an interesting little side. The bloody bird is dead. It is an ex-parrot. It is a parrot no more. Gordon Ramsay. Yeah. I do like that Gearhead show. Oh gosh. Why do I always get these two guys mixed up? There's two British guys who are famous for car shows that I don't know why I get them mixed up, but one of them apparently really is a difficult guy to work with, and the other one's a lot of fun, but both of them are funny. And they're both fairly insulting, especially to Top Gear. Thank you. They're both fairly insulting to Americans, but I've listened to what they have to say, and I'm like, well, they're not saying anything that isn't true, so I don't mind. Yeah, Jeremy something. I keep wanting to say Jeremy Corbyn, but that's a politician that nobody seems to like, yet somehow keeps getting elected. And the other one, one of them, Jeremy, I think he's the one that got fired or something. But and then as soon as they replaced him with some younger people, the show's ratings tanked. But Clarkson, thank you. Clarkson, May, and Hammond. God, I really need to take 5 minutes to study that and get those guys straight. Yes. And I love the episode when he gets in that little dinky car that's roughly the size of this chair I'm sitting in and drives around inside the office. Because everybody loves to choke on fumes inside. But those guys did like they were having way too much fun. But what shocked me is where they take the cheap car and have their visiting actor go around the track. And of all people, Mr. Bean and Rowan Atkinson had the best lowest time, best score. And somebody was telling me that he actually totaled out of a very expensive car. Apparently he loves to drive, but not that good at it. I forget if it was a Veyron or Ferrari or something, but he totaled out some super expensive car. But, Grand Tour, okay. The most watched show in the world. I wouldn't doubt it. It's funny as heck. It's a sudden decel, yeah. And it's like with the old joke we have as a police officer: guns don't kill, bullets do. Or skydiving, yeah, skydiving never killed anybody. It's a sudden stop to bottom. Mm, a McLaren M1. Okay, there you go. And yeah, it kind of brings up a point. I have never built a Fujimi model car kit, and I've never built a IMC, Industrial Motive Corporation model car kit. But both of them I have read repeatedly are, and the same word keeps popping up: fiddly parts. And apparently they're both highly, highly detailed. And the general rule of thumb is if you can build either one, especially a Fujimi car kit, and not leave anything off, especially something like the McLaren, then you have accomplished no small feat. Biggest Diggest, yeah. I have a friend named Biggest Diggest. That's a joke name, like Biggest Diggest. What are you talking about? I have a friend named Biggest Diggest. IMC, the Industrial Motive Corporation, who, as you guys may recall, lost a lawsuit against Monogram over the A1 Skyraider model, which I covered in the thing I did about them. Apparently, Monogram was able to successfully prove that they had basically copied their kit. And I looked at them, and they were fairly close, but there were some differences. Apparently not enough. And I forget what Monogram got. It was $15,000. I forget what. I mean, I was like, was that even worth the lawsuit? And I think they did it more as a matter of principle. And I've never read Hitchhiker's Guide, but I have watched the movie. I'm that kind of person. Don't ignore legal challenges. Okay, I'm gonna imagine if you guys, because I imagine a lot of us have a fairly similar taste in YouTube channels, and I'm gonna assume that a lot of you guys have watched Stephen Leto's Law from time to time, and for now IMC was Industrial Motive Corporation, ITC was Ideal Toy Company. No, this was IMC that got sued. Steve Leto is a Michigan lawyer who's also a huge car guy, and he has a bunch of model cars behind him when he talks. LEHTO. Anyway, the books can get into things that the movies can't. He talked about some of the lawsuits he's talked about were people who didn't get the summons and lost some ridiculous lawsuits because they didn't know they were being sued and never showed up in court. So you definitely don't want to ignore a legal notice. The thing I really like about Leto, it's like talking to your buddy. The way he talks, he's saying he'd be a fun guy to have some beers with. And well, guys, I'm down to drinking water, and that's an unacceptable situation. So if you will excuse me, I am going to take a quick break for station identification, and you guys can chat amongst yourselves for a bit, and I shall be right back. Why does it, when I do this, I feel like I'm the teacher telling the class, I have to go to the room now. You guys all study your books while I'm going, yeah, that's going to happen, teach. Okay, and I will be right back. Whoops. I thought that was... There we go. It's like a cowbell. It's getting close. Shh, quick, everybody. Teacher's coming back. All right. So a thought crossed my mind while I was out there refilling my not tea. You know, you might be in the models when you look up on a windless day and the flag has gotten wrapped around the pole. And the first thing that goes to your mind is, oh, God, I hate it when my decals do that. Well, you just drill a hole in it. That's what a pin vise is for. Drill a hole, put a stem on it, mount it to the stand. Earl Grey hot? How about Earl Grey not? Ha 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 ha. Oh, so witty. Oh, so witty. I'm so witty. Nope, that was actually the coffee break. Tony, you're good. We're just now getting back to operational status here. And, you know, have you guys ever noticed that if you get like a fifth or whatever, that it looks like a lot when it's in the bottle, but when you actually start putting in a shot glass, it kind of, it's not as much as you think. You sent a message on Yahoo. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. By the way, guys, I have been getting a ton of great photos for the viewers build. I'll probably just get started on it here real soon. And okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to share this. Let me just go. Okay, real quick. D live streams. All right, guys, I'm going to show you a picture here that was just sent to me. Give me just a sec. I got to go through all those steps here. There's okay, let's see if I can find it now. Did I send it to the right? Oh, that's in the wrong place. So I go, where is it? Should be right there. Well, if I opened the right file, that would help a lot. Okay. Here is how you set yourself up for a marathon build. Now that there You got everything you need. Computer, entertainment, iPad, popcorn, model, paint. Just don't get the paint on the model. Yeah, one thing I've learned when I'm building models, I got to be careful when I lick my fingers. Uh, well, getting back to what I say, I've got a bunch of um, pictures. There's one of them that was sent to me, and maybe on my big computer I can open up. I couldn't open the phone. It kept saying Google wants permissions. If you send me pictures from like Dropbox or something, sometimes there's issues getting them out and sometimes not. I would say the easiest thing is to email them to me as attachments. That usually is the least argument. If you send them on Facebook, sometimes I can download them, sometimes I can't, but a lot of times they come out real small. Facebook will compress them. It just depends. Some of you guys have been sending like 1 or 2 pictures because they're big for each email, but that's fine because that actually, I can download those. As many as you can pack into an email. The bigger the photo, the clearer, of course. But normally an attachment on the email is the easiest. Like I say, if I get it and I can't open the pictures, I'll let you know. It's amazing how much time can get eaten up by that. But yeah, it's no big deal. I'm going to get cracking because the one thing I've learned is if you get a little behind on these viewers builds, all of a sudden you wind up with 250 photographs and it takes you 2 days to get the thing done. And a lot of great stuff. And I've come up with ways to build files. When I'm on the road, I usually, when I get your pictures, I try to give you a real quick response, just a smiley face or a, yeah, I got it, or something like that, just to let you know I have the picture. What I normally do is open the picture, make sure I can see it, and then, okay, I got that back up. Got it, thanks. Sometimes, make a quick comment on it, but normally it's just an acknowledgement. I just want to let you know that I got it and it's in the file. But when I'm on the road, I try not to open everything on my phone. So if you don't hear from me for a while, maybe I'm waiting till I get home to do it, because I've learned downloading them on the phone comes with its own set of dangers, mainly with misadministration. That means I lose them. So I like to do it when I'm at home, where I put it as soon as I get it, I can put it straight into the file it needs to go into. So when I do the build, it's there. And I don't delete any of the emails, because once in a while I'll misroute one and go back to the email to find it. Second email. All right. I'm going to check one more time. Doing all this in real time. I got to be honest, though. I kind of like this. By the way, the reason my face just got bright is I opened my email on the white screens. Woo! I kind of like having a few things to kick the show off with, but I really enjoy it just turning into a gab session, because if it gets too structured, it's kind of... I don't care what is the year. That's a 2007 that my wife bought me. And it's got one little thing that the previous owner told me about. I probably just need to put some hydraulic fluid in the top, in the convertible top motor. It's starting to make a little noise, which normally is indicated it just needs some fluid. I don't think the fluid's ever been changed since the car was new. So, you just got to remove the back seat. You got to take that plug out, pump in the fluid, run it 3 or 4 times to purge the system, make sure there's no air in it, and put the cork back in. A little messy, but not terribly difficult. So I might do it myself. I thought about asking a dealer how much, because if a dealer does it and they make a mistake, they got to fix it. Whereas if you do it and somehow you break something, you on your own. Really not that complex, but I'm just afraid a dealer might try to, stick it to me. I don't mind paying $100 or something for something like that, just because they know what they're doing. But you go to a dealership, they want $500 to say hello. Hello, $500. Oh, just got some more viewer build pictures just showed up. You know what? I'm going to do something a little off the beaten path here. I'm just going to copy one of these images that was just sent to me, and I'm going to, and I'm just going to show you just one picture at random that I just grabbed that just came up for the viewers build, just for the sake of doing something a little bit different. And I'm not going to say who this is from. if they're watching, they can identify themselves because, normally, unless you have your name on the picture, I denude the pictures of any names because I want people just to enjoy watching them and not get hung up about, some negative comments I want to make. Now, here's a picture that just showed up from a glue trooper, and it's one of 4 that he sent, and beautiful work. Look at that. And this picture will still be in the viewers' builds, but that's just some lovely work. Nice smooth paint. I look at these and I realize we're creating art here, guys. There's no question about it. This is art, and even if it wasn't this perfect, it would still be art. But this is just really, really good stuff, and I'm so glad that you guys are sending. I mean, I'm actually getting more. It's kind of the rate is kind of increased. So I might be putting out more viewers builds. I get a lot of comments from folks that say that they're building because of the channel, or they're building faster, building more, or getting back into it. And I don't have the words to tell you how grateful I am. I'm grateful for the stuff. I mean, people send me stuff, and I am extremely grateful for that. But I'm really grateful that I'm just able to bring a few folks together and a little happiness or joy in our very occupied lives. And that's really the sole goal of this channel. And I'm just I feel like I found a hobby that's just worth doing because it's I feel like I'm able to give. No, that sounds a little pompous. I'm just glad everybody's having a good time. That's it. Keyboard trouble here. Spell check kicks out my texts. Okay. Oh, you can't abbreviate. Well, I'm glad. Mr. C's chubby boy models. He says that he was building airplanes. Again, he used to do basically cars and trucks. Well, with me, it's the opposite. I did only airplanes, and now I'm building cars and trucks too. In fact, our next build is the going to be the Cold War missiles. And then I think I've got a list somewhere here. But after that, oh, is it here? No, that's my. Got my new insurance cards for the Mustang. that or 3D glasses. Okay, that was a lot funnier in my head. But I'm sorry. You got all well. So what the heck was I going to talk about? It couldn't have been that important. Oh, I was doing almost all airplanes, and now I'm doing cars and trucks, and enjoying the heck out of it. I'm learning a lot about cars. Now, okay, let's pull this from thin air. Here's a subject to talk about. I already knew a lot about aircraft. Doing this channel and prepping for it has taught me more, especially about aspects of aviation I didn't pay that much close to, like the 20s and 30s air racing. But since I started doing the model cars, I started doing more research on cars. So just like when I was a kid and I was learning about airplanes by building models, now as a grown-up, I'm learning more about cars by building model cars. And the best ones, the 2 best model cars I've made so far that came out the best, which of course, no surprise, are the last 2 because I'm getting, the more you do it, the better you get at it, were the Fleet Side pickup truck and the 69 Oldsmobile 442. My wife and I were watching Demolition Man the other day with Sylvester Stallone, and of course they come out in that 1970 442, which looks almost identical. And I was thinking, oh, that's a 74 442. That's just like the model I just built, and it does look a lot like the Demolition Man car. And the 442 is the first one that I cut up a figure to fit inside, which is one of those immense miniatures that Mark Tyler sent me. And Want to give a shout out, by the way, real quick to Mark Tyler, Immense Miniatures. If you guys want 124 or 125 scale figures, especially of famous race drivers, he has the computer scan faces and everything. They're really good. Immense Miniatures. He used to do Hollywood special effects and stuff, and he was actually one of the team on Ghostbusters, the original, the good one. Get canceled for that, but so you might want to give it a looky see, but it's greatly enhanced my knowledge. And I know a little bit about cars. I mean, American guy, you're going to know something about cars, but my knowledge of cars has definitely gone up exponentially since I started building models of them. While we're talking about model cars, I want to give a quick shout out to the Lucas C channel and to Andy's Hobby headquarters out in Arizona. I've been watching their stuff, and a lot of, if you're into model cars, those are a couple of other must-sees because there are a lot of really great channels. And Luca invited me to be on his channel, and I did an interview with him, or whatever you want to call it, a Zoom session. Had a lot of fun, and he's the only guy that I've seen so far that's as informal as I am, and it's great. It's very relaxed. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy his stuff, and I learn a lot from it. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of model cars. And one of the things that's come out of this whole spiel that's been a blast is getting to communicate and meet or talk with people like Tom Daniel, Andy Yanchus, Jim Keeler, Lucas C, John Kitt over at Scale Model Car, Mike Machat, and just. It's been a very, very enriching experience, and I always love models, but this has got me to the level where I actually feel like I'm kind of on. Pete Vetri over at Atlantis. And there's so many other people I'd like to talk to. One person I would like to chat with. Well, actually, I'd like to chat with everybody in the model business is Tom Lowe because of round 2. He may be a little too far up the food chain for my little backwater channel, but I would love to get a chance to Zoom with him or chat with him or just email with him. TD, Tom Daniel, I've gotten to email with Tom, and I've never actually talked. It's always been through emails, and but he's hey, Lucas, he's got his fans for sure, and. But it's also a lot of you guys out there that are a lot of you folks who are on here right now. Trays and Scratchy and Orange Tabby. I have as much fun thanks to you guys, your generosity, your support and everything. It means a lot. It really does. Lance just popped up an interesting point. I was just thinking about something. He says, no kaiju or Gundam, just not my areas of interest. One of the things that, and this is not something like by design, it just sort of evolved. I didn't even realize it myself till I started talking about it, was I like building models of just about anything and everything. Obviously, you tend to build what you like. I like aircraft, so, I build a lot of aircraft. But I'm interested in everything. I didn't really know anything about Gundam until folks started sending me some Gundam to build. And then my stepson goes, oh, will you teach me? I want to know how to build a Gundam, because I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And he's a musician. He's never shown any interest in building models at all. He goes, well, that's different. Gundam is something I grew up with and I have an interest in. Like, so what you're saying is Gundam modeling is your gateway drug. Okay. And this channel is literally Max's models. It's just about models. I don't care what the subject matter is. Somebody actually made models of flowers today, and of course I'm totally forgetting who it was, sent me some email. Oh no, it was Adam down in New Zealand. Adam, are you out there? If you're out there, sign on. Sound off. He's probably in bed because New Zealand, it's sleepy time there. Adam sent me some stuff, and he, by the way, he is extremely nice. He's like a model historian like myself. He's given me a lot of great information, and a couple of challenges. I was going to talk about Godzilla and I got sidetracked. I was going to talk about kaiju pops. Okay, let me finish this comment and I'll get back to that. Okay, so he asked me about the, do you guys remember, actually two companies, I think it was Aurora and so Marusan did, you remember how Renwall used to do the transparent man and all that stuff? Well, uh, it might have been Renwall or Aurora did the transparent pigeon, and then Marusan did the transparent pigeon. He was wondering if one had gotten the other's molds because they were only about a year apart, but the American made one had the wings down and the Japanese one had the wings up. So I think they did their own thing. And he was kind of asking why, when the Plastic Posse podcast, I love it. I saw that Kukozilla, how the video that mentioned how models save Gundam. It's anyway. If I resend me that link and I'll try and put it on the bottom of this broadcast. I guess you call this a broadcast, this podcast, when I'm done. So where was it? Oh, so he had all this information on these transparent pigeons. He's asking why would they make a pigeon? Now I can only guess, but people tend to model either what they love or what they're familiar with, and pigeons are everywhere in the world, so maybe they figured it was a bird everyone could relate to. But a lot of the model companies wanted to get away from the militaria and get more into the educational stuff with only limited success. The simple fact is hot rods and militaria, they sell. And so do creature features. I mean, modeling is as much entertainment as it is education, more entertainment than it is education. So, that's my guess as to why the educational aspect never really took off. It was never going to replace the fun aspect. Although I think it's great, but as a friend of mine said, model's a three-dimensional puzzle. We all love puzzles. So there you go. Delicious bird. Well, not the plastic one. Now, back to what I'm about by Godzilla, I was going to bring up the point that this channel, I model everything. Kaiju, sci-fi, fantasy, militaria, planes, trains, automobiles. Ow! Getting old. I'm counting my fingers and breaking one. Well, no more guitar playing for me. Actually, I injured that in a motorcycle accident when I was in the Army, and it's, But, Bachman had a bird. Okay. And, Travis talking about building the Crocodile, which was the Churchill tank with the flamethrower on it. And I think it was last viewer's build. Somebody did a really beautiful one. And he did a great job of making we're talking about Payne Shepherd quality flames coming out of it. And apparently the Crocodile was so effective that when it pulled up, the Germans would wisely just abandon whatever position they were in. Because nothing motivates people like fire. Richard Pryor was talking about that after his little incident. Fire will motivate you. When you're on fire, people get out of your way. I think Aurora did the Cardinal and the Blue Jay. They also did the Black Bear. They had an animal series. I actually did a video with Andy's help on the mold cost prices of those animal series. And that, you have to think about it. That's actually quite a gamble for a kit model company to jump into something like that, because they don't really know if there's a market for it or not. They're trying to expand their markets. You got to understand, guys like Shikes and Gia Marino and Lou Glazer and Wallner and all these others, there's not a manual to go, okay, when the market does this, do that. They're just kind of like, what do we think will sell? And it's a big investment to try and shift directions like that, to create a new series. And it's a gamble. And depending on how kits are doing, you could be gambling the entire business on it. And some companies couldn't pull it off and some could. And then a lot of them would just fall back on their comfort zone because, look, this isn't working. Let's go back to making, Dracula and Frankenstein. But the problem is you have a generational issue. Although kids are continually growing, so you'd think, well, every year you've got new customers. Well, my big brother had a kit, so I've got to have the kit. Well, it doesn't actually work that way. And Was it Renwall that did the pigeon? For some reason, I was thinking it was Aurora. Maybe it was Renwall. You know what? I think it was the Renwall pigeon. Heck, I've got my email up. I guess I could just go take a quick look at it. But Adam, I got to give him credit. He does a lot of research, and he's helped me out here with hey, there it is. Very Odd Kit. It was Renwall. Yes, it was Renwall. You're right. It was not Aurora. It didn't have anything. Aurora had their own weird stuff that they did, and well, I should say weird. No, it's only 2 p.m. in New Zealand. Perfect. Well, then where's Adam? Adam, are you on here? Why aren't you on here? You're in New Zealand. Come on. He's probably at work. Actually, I understand. I've gotten some emails from some Kiwis that watch the channel. And by the way, I've been to New Zealand. I absolutely love that place. I went down to the South Island, rode a motorcycle all the way around the South Island. Sadly, I was in, I think it was Queenstown when 9/11 happened. So that kind of ruined that vacation. But absolutely magnificent, beautiful country. And, well, they filmed Lord of the Rings down there. Yeah, don't even get me started on the whole Dr. Deadly thing. Adam was telling me that apparently the Kiwis are under a lockdown again, which was wondering, they're building a lot of models. Renwall was in their own world. Remember, they started off making like doll furniture and stuff, so they got in the models kind of the roundabout way. And as I've mentioned before, these model companies, their personalities frequently wrapped up in how they got into the industry. Renwall was doing something. They were making a lot of clear stuff already. And so when they got into models, it's actually not surprising if you go out and watch the little history video I did on the Renwall, it kind of makes sense how they always march to the tune of their own drummer. I got to give them credit for that. And Renwall is just the owner's name spelled backwards. Lawner, and why not? You guys heard of the famous Edwards Air Force Base? Well, the town out there, Muroc, which used to be Muroc before it was Edwards, the people who started the town's name were Coram. They just literally flipped their name around, spelled it backwards, and Muroc, and that's how I got its name. This is how great decisions are made. The squirrel, the kitten. Revell had its squirrel, had its kitten. It's Paul. Sorry, Paul. Adams is your last. I'm going to blame the not tea. Well, good. I'm glad you're here. Paul's going to keep me straight. But Paul does a lot of really good research, and the stuff he has sent me, I'm actually planning to make a small video on about these clear animals, and a few other things. But they are odd kits, and I believe it has to do with the desire of a lot of the model companies to move away from military and into more educational stuff. And like I say, it didn't really capture the imagination the way they hoped. And a lot of companies did it. Revell was big into it. And it's actually in the book that I probably have right over here about Revell models, where Lou and Royal Glazer were being kind of grilled by people about, why are you making all these horror toys? And and Pete's sake, Royal went to Berkeley. I mean, we're not talking about, a militarist by any stretch of the imagination. And they were like, look, we're running a business. We've tried all these educational toys, and some companies did move into it with various degrees of success. But it isn't what the kids are buying. And we got to keep the doors open. We got employees to pay. So suck it up. And to her credit, to both of them's credit, because at this point, Lou was already getting sick. And Royal was having to pick up the load. To her credit, by God, she's like, look, we're running a business. I found a picture one time, and I should have saved it. I can't find it now. But they actually had a picture of her from the mid to late 70s. As like one of the top women executives in America back, when that was still kind of a rare thing. And kudos on her. I'm sorry, I just read some of the comments here. Yeah, Steve's bringing up the Revell and the Dr. Seuss kits. Those were, yeah, they. We don't talk about that. um, one of the things I'm thinking about throwing at you guys for a I told my wife this was going to do. Okay, we may or may not do this, just depending how things go. And I was thinking about having a cross genre group build, and what I had planned to do, except I've already built the model, so this wouldn't count. But I was going to take the astronaut that I just built, the big MMU astronaut, just the astronaut, not the backpack. And I was going to take my 16-inch Polar Lights Godzilla, and I was going to have him either riding it or with a saddle, or like a sleigh with Godzilla towing it, and him like stopping to feed him a little nuclear radiation on a fodder bag, and that was going to be my cross. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes my mind just goes places a mind shouldn't go. Really? Lou Glazer on an episode of You Bet Your Life with I have to go look that up. That's cool. Disney movie. Yeah. I think my personal opinion, not that I wouldn't build one, but my personal opinion is that trying to make cartoon characters generally in kits doesn't work out that well. But here I am saying this with Snoopy and the Red Baron right up here. And the Snoopy actually translated pretty well into a kit, so maybe I'm wrong. There's actually several Snoopy kits. The Dr. Seuss stuff may not have done very well, but the Schultz stuff did. Yeah, astronaut in 50. Oh, hey, nice idea. I like that. I don't know. That may be a little too close to reality with, that's kind of like, what is it, the beginning of, you're talking about the beginning of heavy metal. That's a, oh my gosh, I just realized. You guys realize that Starman that Elon Musk shot into space in his Tesla is very close to the beginning of heavy metal. There's got to be a meme in there somewhere. Yeah, okay, everybody's making the same connection. One of the you'd probably have to get the rights to do it, but you could make an astronaut in an early Corvette or T-Bird or whatever it was he was in. There'd be a small cadre of people who'd get the reference and would probably. I wonder if you made a model Tesla with an astronaut in it, if old I can't believe I'm forgetting his name now. Tesla boy would come after you. Elon. Good Lord. Blonde. Okay. Since I pulled the blonde joke out of the hat, somebody's got to write down the worst blonde joke you ever heard. And Flintstones and Jetson models sold pretty well, and they're still available. Interesting. Anime is, I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with Girls und Panzer, which is unquestionably my favorite anime. Okay, I told you this, but I'll tell you again. I'm going to go here first, so the rest of the place doesn't make me sound, oh God, and I drive a white fan. Oh, Lord, I'm going to end up on a list. Anyway, when I made my magnum opus movie, the faux documentary, Godzilla versus the Wehrmacht, only the greatest cinematic, treasure ever, I needed some footage of tanks, and I'm just going to be looking for tigers, and and I find these incredible animations of tanks. The markings seem to be a little bit off, but they had the big Maltese crosses. Well, that's okay because that's actually what I was using for the movie, and so I'm like, this is great. This footage is excellent. I can use it, and I did. I borrowed it, and special effects it, and did a few other things, and you guys, if you haven't seen it, you should. Quiz after the film. So then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. The last clip shows this little teenage girl with her hair in the breeze and top of the lead tiger tank. Like, huh? I had no idea what Girls in Panzer was. So I got curious and looked it up. And man, I made the mistake of watching a couple of little clips of it. And I was like, And then, what's the guy's name? Stugman or something. Somebody who apparently had these things on DVD had revoiced them and recut them in these little 6-minute mini videos that will make you cry. They are so funny. And they are so wrong on so many levels. But man, I'm sorry. They were just hilarious. And so after watching those, I had to watch a couple episodes. Well, my wife comes in. She sees me watching this anime with these little girls driving tanks. And she got a little concerned, like, baby, I'm just here for the tanks. She's like, And they got none other than Nick Moran, the chieftain, to sit in and help them make sure all the tanks were accurate. I mean, come on. Props for that. Since Belden Cooper passed away, Nick Moran's pretty much considered the worldwide, except for David Fletcher over at Bovington and the guys at Bovington, Moran is probably one of the most recognized authorities on armor. And I watch his videos, and the guy's got a real interesting background. For those who don't know, Nick Moran is, I think, now a lieutenant colonel in the California Army National Guard. He served in the Gulf. He's a tanker, career tanker. Before that, he was in the Irish military. He's from Ireland. He was Irish. I'm pretty sure it's Irish. And he was in their military before he immigrated, became a citizen, and joined the U.S. military. Very colorful background, extremely knowledgeable. And he spends a lot of time in museums and in archives. And he dispels a lot of the myths. And there are a lot of myths about tanks out there. And so, what I didn't realize is, and this is a little odd. And by all means, sound off if you think it was something I'm saying not right. Okay. The Japanese seem to have a certain. Okay, I'll just say it this way: the Japanese seem to have a certain fascination with World War II that the Germans seem anxious to avoid. That's all I have to say about that. But, the chieftain track tension expert, absolutely. And the Japanese tend to meld a lot of World War II type imagery and technology into their anime in a lot of different ones. Girls in Panzer is one, but there's some of the folks are mentioning here in the comment stream. They have ones about aviation, and they have both like World War II aviation, but they also have ones in jets, and they're very, very detail oriented. They make these incredibly authentic drawings. And one of them that a friend of mine said, you got to watch this, and it was this odd anime about these modern fighter jets flown by teenage girls, but they're like dressed like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. They're not like in flight suits. It's like their greatest fighter pilot is a little girl with the instincts to fly who's wearing like, a Dorothy type dress, and I'm like, okay, I consider myself a little on the weird side, and this is kind of, making my head tilt, but they're out there, but God bless them for it. So that was just, you cannot not be intrigued to some extent, even if it's not your jam, just the visuals alone, and then you throw in their fascination with kaiju and stuff like that. Now, one thing Stephanie's pointing out is the myth of the M4 Sherman, which in my humble opinion, that's actually where I was thinking about going with this. That is perhaps the chieftain's greatest contribution to correcting history. And after listening to him talk about the M4 Sherman and a lot of other things, I have come to believe that it is the best tank of World War II. I think I've harped on this a little bit before. No. The one I was watching, she was wearing like a Dorothy kitchen dress. I mean, it was not. I know what you're talking about. They also have a fascination with hiked up skirts and everything, but you know, not going to go there. Anyways, real quick, the M4 Sherman and the British Matilda II are the only two tanks that served in every theater of the war, in absolutely every battlefield. They were in the Arctic, they were in the desert, they were in the jungles, they were across the steppe, they were everywhere. Now, the Sherman, which is possibly the most well thought out tank of the war for a lot of reasons, did everything competently. Where it got let down, the early ones, the tracks were a little too narrow. It definitely had its drawbacks. People talk about, but it couldn't take a hit from it. Look, they had M26 Pershings knocked out by Tigers, okay? Nothing was going to stop that freaking 88 without being so heavy it sank into the ground. A Tiger couldn't take a hit from its own gun, all right? So this idea about the armor being too thin, you realize that was a 30-degree slope glacis plate. They had almost 4 inches, which is, the Tiger had 4 inches flat. It was not an under-armored tank. They were simply being hit with guns that no tank could withstand a hit from. It was fast. It was reliable. It had a lot going for it. We were able to build, 55,000 of them, 48,000. I forget. It was an extravagant number. And it is only one of the few tanks that had a hatch for 4 out of the 5 crewmen. So the only person that had to wait to get out was the gunner. He had to wait for the loader to get out, but it had spring-loaded hatches. It sat kind of high and it made a target. Another limitation, that's because they were originally designed around that big stand-up radial engine. But overall, it went everywhere. It did everything, and it did it reasonably well. It was a highly modifiable tank. It had a lot going for it. And the only Sherman that had the diesel, which, by the way, the Sherman used in Fury is a diesel. The Army didn't want it because they wanted to run on regular gas, because that's what the rest of the Army ran on. They were thinking logistics. And in the macro, that was the right decision. But the Marines wanted the diesel because they got their fuel from the Navy, who did use a lot of diesel. So it was easy. There's a whole wet storage issue. That was another limitation on the tank. The Shermans by the end of the war had really, really matured. But remember, people forget that the Sherman was made to a British specification, not an American one. So don't forget to thank the Brits for the Sherman. Quick side note, I finished that book that Claire sent me on the P-51. In fact, I read it on the trip in just a couple of days. It was an easy read, and one of my in-flight was a young man who was very interested in history. And I gifted the book to him when I was done with it because, that's what you do. And I learned a lot from that book. I knew a lot about the Mustang, but every time you read a book or something, there's some little kernel in there. And, of course, we also can thank the Brits for the P-51 because it was, again, something that was made to their specification. And they're also the ones that put the Packard Merlin on it and turned it into a really top shelf, and made the airplane it was. So a lot of times we get credit for stuff that we should be sharing that credit with others. And in the case of the Sherman and the Mustang, which are two of the most prolific and important weapon systems of World War II, a big nod to the UK and to the Brits for without them, they never would have come into existence. Oddball. Hey man, we was assaulted by the Tigers. You know what I mean by assaulted? Hey man, what's with the negative vibes, Moriarty? Always with the negative vibes. Yep, Mustang and the Sherman, both British. Actually, more British ideas or British specifications. Now, in fairness, there's one thing about the Mustang that I have to add. They went to North American and wanted them to license copy the P40. North American said, we can make something better. Give us 120 days. And to their credit, the British were like, okay, if you can make something better. And they did. And that laminar flow wing had a lot to do with that. Pop's P-51 is correct that actually the Sherman had an extremely high survivability rate. One of the reasons a lot of guys burned, depending on whose stats you want to believe, is you got hit by something big, it burst into flames, and everybody inside was stunned by the impact and concussion and couldn't make their way out. They may have even been killed on impact. So it's very possible that when they burned and people didn't get out, that they were already out. No one will ever really know. But the Sherman had the highest survivability rate if you survive the initial impact, of my understanding, of any armored vehicle out there. And that had to do with the 4 hatches and them being spring-loaded. And you wonder why that matters, but I've been in a tank that didn't have a spring-loaded hatch. Like, I mean, you're talking a slab of steel. You put that spring on it, and it kind of fling, off she goes. And the spring, though, you got to be careful, because I forget, it was an M60 I was getting in or something, and it had a spring-loaded hatch, and I threw it open, and we didn't know, and the guy behind me get, you okay? And don't get your finger in there. That was the second tank I was in. It was at a National Guard display, and they let us go around playing. And we realized, hey, look, you can crank the turret around. And we wound up hitting the flagpole with it. No, we didn't. I didn't say that. They might still be looking for me. Yep, it's true that the Germans did learn to shoot the Sherman with the long barrel on it, which was the Firefly. The Firefly was, according to the chieftain, and I believe pretty much everything he says, it was a nightmare to reload ergonomically, because they'd taken that, was it 17-pounder, turned it sideways, and the gunner to reach over the thing to get the breech. It was a nightmare to read. In fact, sometimes, like with the supposedly the tank that knocked out Michael Whitman, when they fired, they backed up into the trees to reload because they knew it was hard to reload that thing, and they pulled back up. And they actually got outside the tank directing things, which really helps. But a lot of people don't realize it was just a high velocity 75 millimeter gun, though. And when we put our own high velocity 75, how was it said? One of them was more, like the 17-pounder was more accurate, but the American gun had better penetration, or maybe I have that backwards. You have to remember, the faster a round goes, the less accurate it is. But the problem we had was we did not have those tungsten steel core rounds until late in the war, and a lot of tanks only got a handful of them. And that was what we needed, because tungsten was needed for a lot of other things. And what we lacked was a decent AP, armor-piercing round. Once the HVAP, the high-velocity armor-piercing round, came out for the 75, it was actually able to knock out armor at a certain point. But the in the 76, the long barrel 76, it was killer. I mean, it could knock out armor. Don't forget, though, that the 76, although it was, the 17-pounder had better penetration, 76 was more accurate. That's it. But don't forget that that the 75, first off, real quick note, and you guys probably already know this, all of them were 75 millimeter, right? They called the long 75 the 76 to prevent confusion and somebody getting the wrong ammo. But actually, all of them are 75. Well, at least the American guns are all 75 millimeter. And you could screw any head onto the round. But the breeches and everything completely different. They were not interchangeable. So they figured we better call it a 76 just to prevent confusion. Now, with that out of the way, the short 75 was actually, was the M3 gun, was actually a much better, much more practical general purpose gun. The only thing the 76, as we called it, was better for was knocking out armor. The reason was, and this gets into flight dynamics, the 75 millimeter had a thin-skinned, high-explosive round. It detonated quickly on impact and scattered a lot of shrapnel. It was extremely devastating on infantry, for knocking out bunkers and stuff like that. What we call the 76 was optimized for penetration, but just to get the shell to get the projectile to hold together at those speeds, they had to have a thicker skin on it. And as a result, it tended to, if they used it in the high explosive anti-infantry role, it tended to hit the dirt and go into the ground before it would detonate, and was far less effective as a high explosive round. So, you want those 76s in case you come across Panthers or Tigers or whatever. But the 75 is a better general purpose gun for 90% of what you're 95% of the situations you're going to need. And by the way, as was pointed out by a couple of people, in the movie Fury, which is a great movie, I enjoyed immensely, but it had its limitations. And one of them was they hit that Tiger with their high velocity 76 in the mantlet. That gun was made specifically to knock out that tank. It should have gone through. So, but hey, it's a movie, right? And a real good one. And I'm just catching up on a few of the comments here. As Michael pointed out, I just said 75 was a much better anti-personnel round. The Israeli Super Sherman. One of you guys sent me a model of that, and at some point I will build it. My brother had actually built a model of a British Israeli Sherman and I remember it being on a shelf, and I remember looking at it and just something was different. Now the M18 Hellcat is an interesting vehicle. Geek of the Gnome is talking about it. I actually saw one. There's the guys down here in DeLand, Florida, that have a bunch of armored vehicles. They come out and do these shows and everything. A dedicated group of guys too, and they have a Sherman with a 105 howitzer. Yeah, that was a thing. They have a Hellcat. They have a Sherman with something else on it. They got about 5 tanks, and they've got 155 Long Tom and some other stuff. And they have a few German vehicles that they ride around, mostly motorcycles. But anyway, they take off. They got an M7 Priest. They take off in these vehicles. And, of course, most of the vehicles are on a Sherman-style chassis, a horizontal volute system. But then you see the Hellcat, which has those big road wheels. And that Hellcat is a freaking sports car compared to those others. That thing moves. And its speed is life. And impressive little vehicle. And the guys I know that I've listened to that crewed the things really loved. He couldn't take a hit. Had thin armor. But man, that little bugger could move, and it packed a wallop. Later on, they had the Jackson head with the 90 millimeter on it. So, we're getting into some serious World of Hurt stuff. You've heard of Game of Thrones with these, World of Tanks? Well, these guys had World of Hurt, and can't take a hit, but boy, it can deliver. It had a knockout punch in it. Oh, tanks, always fun. Planes, trains, automobiles, and tanks. Yeah, when I hopped inside that Sheridan, every armored vehicle I was ever in except the M113, the inside was white, and it didn't take long to figure out that was to enhance the limited light that was inside. Yep, the Calliope, we learned a lot. The Germans had the Nobelwerfer, we had the Calliope, the Russians had the Katyusha, and rockets, cheap and annoying. Well, guys, it's getting to be about that time, so I'm going to ask you, since we're on tanks, if you had to be a crew member on a tank in World War II, what tank would you want to be on? And with that note, boys and girls, I'm going to leave the thing running for a few minutes so you guys can chat amongst yourselves. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, as always. Hope you had a great time. Guys, take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.